Hi, Mark Pearson, Executive and Artistic Director of the College Light Opera Company, coming to you from upstage left at the Highfield Theater. Welcome to BackStage, a week in review of work being done by our talented design and production students. Let's see what they've been working on.
Good evening. Kristen Knutson, Production Manager and Technical Director at the College Light Opera Company. This week, the Design and Production Department was challenged with a team design task. In honor of CLOC's origins in the Oberlin, Gilbert and Sullivan players, I asked these young artists and technicians to take inspiration from a selection of operettas and design a Gilbert and Sullivan puppet theater. Each team picked a single song to focus on. They have assembled research images and created design sketches and models for a puppet theater proscenium, a backdrop, and a number of puppet costumes. The teams were also instructed to spend no more than 24 hours collectively working on their collaborative design. Alongside the creative work, you will hear corresponding archival recordings from past CLOC productions. So without further ado, I present the design and production Team Pirates, Team Pinafore, and Team Rudigore.
Never mind the why and wherefore love can never ranks, and therefore though his lordship stations mighty, though stupendous be his brain, though harm tastes are mean and flighty, and her fortune poor and plain. Ring the merry bells of lordship, rend the air with warbling wild, for the union of his lordship with the humble captain's child, for a humble captain's daughter,
for a gallant captain's daughter,
and the law who rules the water,
and a tar who plows the water.
Let the air with joy be laden, and the songs in air above, for the union of a maiden with the man who owns her love. Never mind the why and wherefore love can level ranks, and therefore though your nautical relation in my set could scarcely pass, though you occupy a station in the lower middle class. Ring the merry bells on lordship, rend the air with warbling wild, for the union of my lordship with a humble captain's child, for a humble captain's daughter,
For a gallant captain's daughter,
and the lord who rules the water.
and a tar who plows the water.
Let the air with joy be laden, and the songs in air above, for the union of a maiden with a man who owns her love.
Never mind the why and wherefore love can level ranks, and therefore I admit the jurisdiction ably have you played your part. You have carried from conviction to my hesitating heart.
Ring the merry bells on lordship, rend the air with warbling wild, for the union of my lordship with a humble captain's child, for a humble captain's daughter,
For a gallant captain's daughter,
and the lord who rules the water.
and a tar who plows the water. Let the air with joy be laden,
Ring the merry bells on lordship,
for the union of a maiden.
for her union with his lordship,
Ring the songs in air above,
for the man who owns her love. Ring the songs in air above, for the man who owns her love.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Moran, and for this week I was put on Team Rudigore, where I got the opportunity to design the proscenium arch for our puppet theater. I haven't designed something set-wise myself since about senior year of high school, I think, maybe junior year of high school, which is about 4 years ago now, and I thought I would talk to you through my process while you get to watch me design. So let's get to it. Okay, so right off the bat with design, I immediately went to our best friend, Google, and I looked up Rudigore by Gilbert and Sullivan just to get some background about the show. We did it last year at CLOC. I was a part of the scenic crew last summer, and I remember bits and pieces about the show, but I never really got the chance to watch it because we're always so busy in the scenic shop. And the song that we chose to design was When the Night Wind Howls. So this is the part of the show, if you know it, when the ancestors come to life in the Rudigore castle. And here you'll see me taking a picture of the original poster for Rudigore and another picture from it, just to get some inspiration from the original production itself in my design. And then because it's set in a castle, I decided to look up old English castles. We decided on an era of 1840s Victorian, so I tried to also find that style during my research. Looked up Ritagor, and fun fact, if you look up Ritagor on Google, you will find pictures from last year's production at CLOC, which was pretty cool to see again. So after doing all my research, I made this sort of inspiration board for my design to kind of reference while I was drawing and painting. And the one thing that I noticed a lot was a lot of detailed woodworking and arches and just very beautiful ceilings, honestly, which I thought would be a great thing to use or take inspiration from. But you'll notice that even though I love the woodworking, I decided not to really include it in my design. Theoretically, yes, it would be there if I had more time to draw it, but with this being kind of a 24-hour challenge, I didn't want to waste time trying to get the perfect detailing in the woodwork. I just wanted to get the base idea of what I wanted for this proscenium arch to look like. So this picture right here, I really like the arches, and I liked this paneling on the side because I wasn't sure what I was going to do on the side of my proscenium arch yet. And so I decided to kind of take inspiration from that. I liked the bookcases, but I also figured that might be a little much to draw. I really love these arches right here. I thought they were so cool. I thought they had great potential for my design. And then I found this like color palette making website, and I found this color palette. I searched through it, played with the contrast, played with the saturation, and I thought it was a great muted old castle kind of look. And then I also found the reds that would match with it. And at this point, once I decided that my inspiration board was done, the team met up and we talked about our research, and we agreed on styles that we liked and colors that we liked, and we all used them to create one unified design. And this is when I began designing. Alright, and now we have entered my time-lapse of design. The first thing I did was I printed out my inspiration board, and then I circled the details and styles that I really liked and wanted to include in my design. I tried putting them on the paper, I redid a few things sometimes, I brought the arch down at some point in this, and then when I got to the panels, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I did some research again. And I ended up finding this photo, which I really liked the back paneling for, so I decided to go ahead and use that on the sides. I also really liked the use of color, because I was having trouble figuring out how to put color into my design, and I thought this would be a great way to pull in the green that I made with my color palette. And now I just took the time to find the right brown that I wanted to use to represent wood. I didn't take the time to put in any like wood grain into it because I didn't want to do that with this. I just wanted to get the base colors that represent the wood, and then like some gold later in details, and then eventually the green. So I'll just let you guys watch me paint for a little bit because there's not much else to say.
When the night went house in the chimney cows, and the bat in the moonlight flies.
So now I took the time to figure out which type of green I wanted. I didn't want something too lime green, I didn't want something too bright. I found this kind of muted green that matched my color palette, and then I wanted it to be kind of texturized to look older, so at times you'll see me take part of a paper towel, and with the wet paint I kind of dabbed it to make it look a little splotchy, to give it some form of texture so it didn't look like plain watercolor flat paint. And this is one of the coolest parts of my design. I decided to print out these statue head busts of English male figures, and I made these built-ins on the sides of my proscenium arch where these built-ins would go, and my idea was if this was a real production, these would be real actors sitting in the window the whole time. When the ancestors all come to life, the statues themselves would come to life. I just thought it would be so cool, and I needed to include it in my design. And that about wraps up my portion of this video. I'm very proud of how this design came out. I think it really captures old castle that's been through many generations of, you know, evil ancestors, and I think it really captures the idea for this scene as well. When all the ancestors come to life, it's kind of creepy, it's regal at the same time, which I think is very fitting for all of these multiple personalities that show up on stage. So I hope you enjoyed watching me design, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video as well.
In the chimney cows, and the bat in the moonlight flies, and inky clouds like funeral shrouds sail over the midnight skies. When the footpads clear, let the night birds wail, and black dogs bray at the moon. Then is our spectres all in As a soft breeze sweeps over the trees, and the mist lie low on the fen, from grateful stones are gathered bones that once were women and men, and away they go with a muck and the boat to the river and to stone. For what will limit our holiday? The dead of the night I know. The dead of the night I know. I know. The dead of the night I know. And any cold.
Hi everyone, my name's Taylor Aragon and I'm on Team Redditgore. So for this project, we chose the scene in Act 2 where Robin speaks to his ancestors, who come to life from paintings and coerce him into committing a vile crime and kidnapping a woman. So I worked on the puppets alongside with Thomas. We each did one principal character in the scene and then one ancestor. So I had done Sir Roderick and a grumpy Tudor woman. And I know traditionally the ancestral course is all male, however, because this assignment involved puppets, I figured we had a little bit of leeway in terms of characters and costumes. My team was super collaborative and vocal from the beginning, and right away I felt like we were instantly bouncing ideas off of each other. And we worked really well together. We had met quite a few times during the week, and the first time was to pick what scene we were doing and to decide who was doing what. And then the second time we came back with our own personal research and kind of play with ideas, bounce off of each other, things like that. And right off the bat, it just kind of clicked. And finally, we checked in on Wednesday to kind of figure out where everyone was at that point and, make some final touches based off of what everyone else had done. So we had sort of gone with like a spooky theme, but still allowed for a whimsical aspect to fit with the tone of the show. And as you can see, I put Sir Roderick in some sinister, deep purples and a taupey green. And we decided to set the show into the 1830s and the 40s to really anchor it into the Victorian era. And since Sir Rod had been painted 10 years before, you'd be able to see a pretty clear difference between the Regency period, Sir Roderick, and Robin, who was in the Romantic period. I also imagined a grumpy Tudor woman, as I said earlier, being a part of the ancestors almost immediately. I was inspired by the stories of Bloody Mary, and I feel like she'd fit right in with the cursed family. Here is a time-lapse of my digitally rendered puppets, and I hope you enjoy.
Chimney cows, and the bat in the moonlight flies, and inky clouds like funeral shrouds sail over the midnight skies. When the footpads clear, let the night birds wail, and black dogs bray at the moon. Then is our spectre's holiday, then is the ghost I know. For then is the ghost I know. I know. Then is the ghost I know. As the soft breeze sweeps over the trees, and the mist lie low on the fen, from grateful stones are gathered bones that once were women and men, and away they go with a muck and the boat to the river and to stone. For what will limit our holiday? The dead of the night I know. The dead of the night I know. I know. The dead of the night I know. And then each goes with his late-night toes to the churchyard, thence takes flight with ushers in our next high holiday.
Hi, my name is Thomas J. Charles, and I created the Sir Riven Murgatroyd puppet for Team Redagore. I knew instantly that I wanted to build an actual puppet for this show, but doing something like a Jim Henson Muppet type thing, which is what I initially wanted to do, I knew wasn't going to be feasible just because of the time that it would take to build the puppet and then dress it and making its clothing as historically accurate as possible. It wasn't feasible, and I knew that I wasn't going to be happy with how it looked. So one of my teammates actually showed me this really great image of a shadow puppet, and I was inspired to do something like a puppet on a stick that was completely drawn so that I could achieve the level of detail that I wanted to with the Victorian fashion, but still have an actual puppet. So hours 1 and 2 were really spent on some research and then on rendering the puppet. We decided that our production was going to be set in the 1840s, so I did a lot of research on what that meant because fashion throughout the Victorian period changed so much, and it evolved from the very beginning to the end because it spanned 70 years. That's a long time. And then I started to render the puppet, and I decided to do a rendering before I drew the whole thing. Rendering is not my strong suit as a designer. I'm much better at building and my construction abilities in fabric and putting a really polished final product on stage. Hour 3 was dedicated to determining my color palette, and we had talked as a team about the richness of the tones in the Murgatroyd house. So I decided to use red for the lapels, the cuffs, and the cravat on my puppet. I chose those colors because it, to me, symbolizes the blood that is on the hands of every single Murgatroyd because of the crimes that they are forced to commit every day and the penalty of being tortured to death by their ancestors if they don't commit those crimes. That's symbolized in the cuffs and in the cravat because of popular methods of execution. But the red on the lapels, for me, it symbolizes the lungs because the lungs are really what give us life. It's where our oxygen is held in our bodies. And they're doing this because they're fighting for their lives. This is their sort of deal with the devil. If they're going to continue to live with this curse, they've got to commit a crime every day. So it strikes that balance between life and death. I drew the puppet again. This time I drew it as a dismembered figure because I knew that I wanted to make a jointed puppet. I knew that I wanted this puppet to move like a person. So I decided to break it all down more or less anatomically correct so that it would have the ability to bend its arms and legs like a person would. After I got it all cut out, I knew that I had to start to assemble this puppet. And I thought that I wanted to use like little brads, little metal tabs to give it joints. I knew that brads would give it the rotation that it needed, but I realized that I didn't have any brads. But then I picked up a needle and thread and I decided that I was going to sew my puppet's limbs together. But because he was just drawn on like copy paper, printer paper, he was really floppy. So I realized that I needed to back him with some cardstock. And the cardstock added enough stability to the torso, the neck, and the arms that he has the stability and the mobility that I was looking for. And that was my process for building the puppet. What I think is so great about this concept of making a puppet, particularly for a Gilbert and Sullivan show, is that these shows are already so much fun, and there is a level of silliness and wackiness to these shows, and they can't be taken too seriously because they are satire after all. And there's something about that marries with the concept of a puppet so well. I think it's also important to remember to tap into the kid inside of all of us. We take our jobs and our lives, regardless of what walk of life or what field you work in, we all take ourselves so seriously. And a puppet, there's nothing better than a puppet show to just make you unwind. I also think it's a great way of experimenting with this idea of virtual theater. I mean, we are all at home right now, and puppets are a great way. They're a great universal language, just like theater, of bringing everything together and bringing people from all over the world together to enjoy a piece of art.
Hi everybody, so we're Team Pirate, and the name of our project we like to call the Puppets of Penzance. So first I thought we could just introduce ourselves a little bit.
I'm Val. Yeah.
I'm Melie.
And I'm Alyssa.
So the idea for our project is that we wanted to focus on the song I Am the Very Model of a Modern Major General from the Pirates of Penzance, and we thought that it would be really fun to do it with like Muppets or in like a Muppet style theater setting. So first we're just going to go through a little bit of our research, visual research, and some of the renderings that we did for our project.
So here we have my visual research for the costumes, some of which is historical of late 18th century pirates, and some of some sketches that were done of the first production of the Pirates of Penzance, and then also we have pictures of from the movie Treasure Island, which is a Muppet movie in which they are pirates, obviously, and which helped me look at how to change clothing to fit a puppet. Next. So here we have my renderings of the Major General and the Pirate King. On the left is the Major General, and he's in a Royal Navy Major General uniform from the late 18th century, which is fairly straightforward. And then on the left, we have the Pirate King, and I put him in red as a sort of opposition to the blue of the Major General, and just gave him a little more panache than the other pirates, just so he had a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, oh God, stature maybe, yeah, and just set him a little bit apart, but keeping him within the color palette of the other pirates.
Awesome. Yeah, I worked on the proscenium, and this is some of my research. I was really focusing more on the pirate aspect of things and also the Muppet Show aspects of things. So when I was working on it, the Muppet Show, the big like theater that they all sit in sometimes, in general, and to when the curtain comes down and you see Kermit popping out of the O is kind of what I was going for. And like the gold and the red and the very classic theater look was what I was looking for, but mixed in with those elements of pirate, bringing in like the front of the ship, having sometimes a mermaid or some sort of very like beautiful thing just sitting on top of it, bringing them to wherever they need to be, the nets, and just the way things are constructed. And if we want to look at the rendering, which is the next slide, I did half of the proscenium, so just in your mind say reverse and repeat on the other side. In the center, we would center in the top, we would have this beautiful mermaid woman who's kind of looking over everything as if you'd see it on the front of a ship. On the proscenium closest to the inside of the stage, it's all of this is gold with some red in the back of it, pretty much like highlighting those gold pieces and making them pop a little bit more. We kind of have this like rope-esque wrapping the proscenium as if you would see it on a dock or something. And then you have little portholes going up the side on the inside, so maybe you can throw a light in there or something like that. And then on the like lattice work that's kind of there, I was thinking more ropes or nets, even the ladders that they climb up. It would not be climbable because also we're working with puppets, but this is what the proscenium would look like. So yeah, and the next image is another image, just more of like my workstation and how it looked. Sometimes when you get scans, they get a little light, so I thought this would be a good image to see it a little darker.
Okay, so I worked on the backdrop, and something that I definitely wanted to focus on with this was about trying to incorporate the element of puppetry into like the scenery. So it's not just the puppets that we see as characters, it's also the world that we live in. So something that I was very interested in, because traditionally for Pirates of Penzance, especially for Act 1, there's waves and you see the ship. And I thought that it would be really interesting to have almost like a living backdrop with like multiple different layers of like flat pieces or set pieces. So we could have the waves move back and forth and almost like look like it's like a moving sea. And then we could also see the pirate ship move on and off. And so this is just some of the visual research, or more of like the vibe that I was thinking of for the style of the artwork, just because the world that the Muppets live in is almost, it's like definitely not the world that we as people live in. It's more fantastical, it's more cartoonish, and I just thought that finding some really good like cartoon type artwork would be really good to help inspire me. So here are some of the progress photos that I took while I was creating my project. I didn't do a rendering, I did sort of a model of, and so the pictures that you see all the way to the left, those individual pieces are the individual like flat pieces that move in the living background. And then if you look at the middle image, you can see that there's a sky. So the sky is the actual backdrop that goes behind those pieces. And then the picture all the way to the right is with just a little bit of color to show how it looked before I added in the waves coloring. And so here's the final product all together. The way I did it is that I just took like a shoebox and I poked holes in the sides and I put skewers in, which I glued the individual like flat pieces to. And in a video, you can see that if you move the skewers side to side on the waves in particular, they will move. So it'll look like the waves are moving and crashing, and just gives it this different depth than just a backdrop would have, and this really living look. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the stars of our show, the Muppets.
Yeah, so we all worked on a Muppet or two, you never know, but I worked in the song, there's kind of like the chorus girls in the back, they're just singing, but they're on the upper scale sort of level. And when we were talking about what Muppets were what, we talked more about the class like separation and understanding who was who, and we decided to go with the monsters as being more of like the upper class people who are chilling and vibing around. And then the animalistic were more of like the pirates, to see more of like the scroungy dirtiness of them. But when I was working on like the specific background girls, the Phenomena girls from the song came straight into my head because they are the classic backup singers, in my opinion. But I really loved their look. So and all the costumes on the other side were some of that I pulled from, looking into some more classical research in that area. And if you want to skip to the next slide. So this is kind of what I came up with. She is still that classic Phenomena girl, but she has a little hat on the back of her head with ribbons coming off, the classic puffy shoulders with the button-up jacket that kind of slims her, but she's a puppet, so it's not really the shape and the figure of an actual like woman who would be wearing this, but it is the shape of a puppet. All of these puppets would be different. They'd maybe have some different types of monsters in there, but all varying colors. to keep it colorful and still upbeat as the song is. So there she is, and she would have pink skin, and you can see all the colors on the side with purple lips, with the blues and like the whites and the jacket and the kind of like straw hat. Yeah.
So here we have the General and the Pirate King once again, and this time I'm going to talk about the choices that I made in reference to the puppets. So just these images are kind of how I was looking at how Muppets are put together, like what their eyes look like, what their mouths look like, and how it differs from each different type of Muppet, from monster-ish to animalistic, and how things change or stay the same. And so I chose green for the Major General because it complemented his uniform pretty well, and I gave him a mustache because that was just, to me, a very clear character choice. And then for the Pirate King, I made him a cat, and just seemed like a Pirate King-ish animal. And I kept him once again in the darker browns to keep him with the other pirates.
So what I ended up working on for the Muppets was the individual, like the pirate ensemble, and how those guys were going to look. So as we mentioned a little bit before, is that we wanted to keep the pirates to be like animalistic type puppets, and so I drew some inspiration from Muppet Treasure Island with some of the animals that they were utilizing for their Muppets when I was choosing which ones I wanted to use for the ensemble. So I chose to do a goat and I chose to do a pig. But since that there are more than just two pirates in the ensemble for this show, there's definitely room for more animals to be included. These were just the two that I was personally thinking of. And we had a conversation about what different colors we wanted to be included into the different like classes of the Muppets. So the Phenomena girls, or the chorus type girls, would have brighter colors or more pastel colors, and the pirates would have definitely more like a muted color scheme. And we specifically wanted to set aside for the ensemble pirates green as like an accent color, so I tried to incorporate that into their clothing. And yeah. So thank you for watching our video. We hope you liked it.
Thank you.
I am the very model of a modern Major General. I'm information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England and I quote the fight historical, from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I'm very well acquainted with matters mathematical. I understand equations both the simple and quadratical. About binomial theorem, I'm dealing with a lot of mules. With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. Many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. Many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. Many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. I'm very good at integral and differential calculus. I know the scientific names of beings and animalculus. In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a modern Major General. In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, he is the very model of a modern Major General. I know our mythic history, King Arthur's Execaradox. I answered hard acrostics, I've a pretty taste for paradox. I quote in elegiacs all the crimes of Heliogabalus. In conics I can draw peculiarities mirabulous. I can tell undoubted Raphaels from Jared Dowson's Ophanes. I know the croaking chorus from the frogs of Aristophanes. Then I can hum a fugue of which I've heard the music's din of war.
BackStage is part of our larger programming, Digital CLOC. Digital CLOC is made possible by a generous gift from Phil and Liz Gross. If you'd like to learn more about our programming or how you can become a supporter, visit us at collegelightoperacompany.com. Tune in again next week for another installment of BackStage.